78 Reflections. I'm so glad you're here. Today I'm going to respond to a tarot tag that was started by Tarot's Magic called Let's Be Tarot Friends. Now I know this tag has been around for a while, but I recently saw a response by Danny Mystic, and since I am starting a brand new tarot channel, I thought what a great way to get started. Join this tarot tag party and hopefully meet some tarot friends. So with that being said, there's 21 questions, so I'm going to jump right in. Starting with, what type of art are you looking for in a deck? I wanted to show you The Secret of the Witch's Garden because this deck really illustrates the type of art that I am drawn to. It's a beautiful, earthy colored palette, more of muted color tones. I find that the images tell a story. They make me feel something. And I love almost every card in this deck. And so this deck is a great example of the type of art that I am drawn to. And I've pulled aside some of my favorite cards so I could share them with you. This is the favorite Knight of Cups that I've ever seen. And part of the reason for that is not just the image, but the description in the guidebook. The guidebook is wonderful. And I want to read to you just a little bit from the guidebook. This Knight of Cups, her protective armor has been laid on the shore. The Knight of Cups is a traditional romantic, the charmer of the deck. Art and poetry inform the imaginative quality of the Knight of Cups. She pauses for beauty, listens to the language of emotion, and expresses what others can only dream. I love the image, but it is also really well complemented by the description in the guidebook. And I also really love the Strength card. I think the Strength card was the reason why I bought this deck, because I live in the mountains and there are bears up here. Now, I wouldn't do what she's doing, bears, but I do really love that image. And this Eight of Pentacles is just so spectacular. The woman in this image is also the Hermit. And here, this wise woman is sharing her mastery with these children. And I just think this is absolutely beautiful. So that is a great example of the artwork I'm drawn to. Question number 2. What do you search for in a deck? Well, so first of all, I use tarot for 3 main purposes. The first purpose is doing readings, doing daily card draws. For those, I am really looking for something that follows the RWS. And so this deck, the Tarot Vintage, I love. I love it because it is an RWS clone. I also love the color palette. You can probably see it's got a similar color palette to the Witch's Garden. And I absolutely love this deck. I love that it looks, vintage. The cardstock is fine. It's not as beautiful as the Witch's Garden, but cardstock is fine. It's light. The cards are standard tarot size. So I love that. I love that deck and I use it a lot. I also use a newer deck, which is the Earth Woman. And you'll notice that it too has the type of art and color palette that I've already spoken about. It is very much RWS, and I love the images. I know that some people don't like that the faces don't, or that they don't have faces, but I love them. I love this deck. I think it's beautiful, and I really enjoy it for daily draws, or for doing readings. The second category is for writing and storytelling. For that, I really enjoy the Faraxa Tarot. And that one, it's got the fairy energy, which I am very deeply connected to. The images have just been so inspiring for me for story writing. It has been an incredible experience. And so the second category of what I'm looking for is something that tells a story. I work with Phyrexa Tarot for a lot in the latter part of, or the second half of 2024. And then near the end of the year, I bought a second deck for storytelling, and that is Under the Oak Tarot. And similarly, this has a storytelling aspect to it. And so I have not started using this deck yet because I'm still deeply intertwined with the Phyrexa in terms of my writing. But this deck I purchased for the purpose of writing, inspiration, and storytelling. The third category that I use tarot for is for communicating with spirit. And I only have one deck that I use for that right now, but it would be another category of deck that I would consider when I'm looking for a new deck. This deck, you can see that I've modified it. And even though this is called a tarot deck, I do not consider it a tarot deck. I consider it an oracle. And I only use it for communicating with spirit. It lives on my altar when it's not in use. And this is the Akashic Tarot. So when I'm looking for tarot cards, I'm looking for something that will fit into one of those categories, either something I'm going to use for readings, something I'm going to use for writing prompts, or I might consider getting another deck for communicating with spirit. Question 3. What deck are you most intrigued by right now and why? Now, this is surprising to me because I have had a very complicated relationship with the Dreams of Gaia. I bought this deck last year when I was in New Orleans, and I really liked it at first, and then grew to despise it because it has its own special system. It does not follow the standard RWS format. And so I found it very difficult to read and understand. And also, I do not enjoy some of the artwork. And so I was thinking about getting rid of it. But then I decided to modify it. And I started doing wobble readings with it. And using the guidebook, I have just had such an amazing experience of getting readings that blew my mind in terms of how they applied to my everyday life and experiences. So I've been working with this deck every day, and I am very intrigued by it, which is quite surprising considering it was on the chopping block. But working with guidebook, using it for wobble readings, I will continue to do that. But once again, I don't consider it a tarot deck. I consider it a oracle deck. And I originally thought about just getting rid of some of the cards I do not like in it, but I have decided not to do that. This is an example of the type of art in this one I do not like. I just don't like the color palette. I find it to be very aggressive and busy, but I've decided not to do that. I'm going to keep them all in. I'm going to work with them. So next we have, is there a card in a deck you always check out first and why? So the answer to that question is the Hierophant card. And the reason why I check the Hierophant card out first is because I was trying to find the RWS one, but I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. The reason why I check this out first, because it is my life card. And I also feel deeply connected to the Hierophant's journey. And I know a lot of people don't like the card. And in fact, I didn't like the card initially either. And I was kind of angry when I found out it was my life card because of these kind of, I guess, religious undertones. But how I interpret the Hierophant is a wise woman. You see in this card here. She is a woman who has had to learn some hard-won lessons. The life path of a Hierophant is not an easy one, but the Hierophant, the big challenge of the Hierophant is that she needs to take all of her hard-won lessons and share them with the world. And she has a duty to do that to fulfill her life's path. So I feel very connected with that. And I do really love the Hierophant. And I always want to look and see how they're representing it. Doesn't mean I won't buy the deck, but I want to see how they're representing her before I buy it. So the next question, if there is one card in a deck you really don't like, would you want to miss out on it? Well, you probably already figured that out from other things I've talked about. But to illustrate, I also pulled out some of my least favorite cards from some of my quite beloved decks. So this card is from the Everyday Witch. And I do not like the representation of the Wheel of Fortune because I just think it makes it campy, and I just don't like that representation of the wheel at all. I also do not like this Death card. And those are both from the Everyday Witch. There's only one card in my beloved Witch's Garden that I don't like, and it's this one. And the reason why I don't like it, I would be okay with this card if it was an animal deck, but literally none of the other images focus exclusively on animals except for this one. And so I don't like it. I think it's inconsistent with the rest of the artwork, and I just don't like that one at all. In the Under the Oak Tarot, I do not like how they represent the court cards in the swords suit. I do not like these stone images. Yeah, I don't connect with them. I don't enjoy reading them. So don't like them at all. I also do not like this representation of the Page of Wands. I love page cards normally, but I do not like this representation of the page card at all. In the Pharaxa, there are a few images that I don't like, and it's mostly because of the creepiness of the animals. So I will keep them, but I will say that lesson learned from these. Would I still have bought these decks? Probably, but I'm just going to be more discerning going forward and watching flip throughs before I purchase decks because I really don't want to have a lot of cards I don't like in a deck. Question 6. What is your least favorite card in the tarot and why? So starting with my favorite, and I couldn't narrow it down to one, so I will have two. So the first one, you might be surprised to hear that the Eight of Swords is one of my favorite cards in the deck. And the reason for that is really personal to my story. And that is that I grew up in a very religious, controlling environment. And I spent much of my life feeling helpless. And what I really love about the Eight of Swords is that she can be free. She has the ability to be free. She just has to take a decision to be free. And she can be. And so whenever I see the Nine of Swords, and some of these images I like more than others, but whenever I see the Nine of Swords, it's just always a reminder to me. I love this image of the Nine of Swords. It's always a reminder to me that I'm not in a cage. And if I am in a cage, the door is wide open. And I can make different choices and be free. And so I love, love, love that card. The other card I love on a completely more pleasant note is the Three of Cups. So I love the Three of Cups because it represents one of the things that's most important to me in this world, and that's sisterhood. And I don't really love that representation, but look at these beautiful images. I just love the Three of Cups. The Three of Cups represents for me sisterhood, joy, connection, tribe, community. I love all of these cards. Look at that card. You can just feel the joy in this card. So the Three of Cups, as well as the Nine of Swords, are my favorite cards in the deck. I do have some favorites in the Major Arcana as well, but so that segues nicely into my least favorite card, because what is the opposite of joy? The Five of Swords. So the Five of Swords is a no-win situation. It is a series of events that is escalating in a negative way. Look at that card. This is one of the most powerful Five of Swords I've ever seen. It really brings out a lot of feelings for me. So I hate it when the Five of Swords comes up in a reading. I do not enjoy it. I do not like the Five of Swords card. And that's another thing when I'm looking for a new deck, is I always want to see how they represent the swords, because I think that can be an area where some decks can really go wrong. Right? What do people close to you feel about the tarot and you doing tarot? You know, the interesting thing about the tarot is I really see it as a spiritual path. And so I don't necessarily talk to everyone about the tarot, but I don't necessarily not talk to them about the tarot either. I have some really close friends. My daughter was actually the person who introduced me to the tarot and got me hooked on tarot. And I have some really close friends who are interested in it. Nobody else in my real life that reads tarot, but I do have people who are open to talking about it. And people I know are probably going to be either afraid of it or not interested. I just don't even bring it up. The next question is, how do I feel about the esoteric stuff in tarot? And I had a deck I wanted to show you, which is a deck called the Book of Shadows, So Above. This deck has a terrible cardstock, and it's quite shiny, so it's hard to show. But I bought this deck because of wanting to dig into the more esoteric side of the tarot. This is a very different deck than I usually am drawn to, but it really goes into astrology, and I think is a deck that I can really learn from. So I am interested in it. One of the things that has really pulled me into the tarot is how complicated it is and how many layers there are. It's something I feel like it would be impossible to learn everything. And so as soon as you've learned one aspect of it, there's something more to be learned. And I absolutely adore that about the tarot. So how do I feel about it? I find it fascinating. I know very little about the esoteric side of the tarot, but I want to learn about it. Question 9. RWS, Thoth, or Marseille, and why? Definitely RWS. It's what I learned on. It's what I'm most comfortable with, but I'm interested in learning about the others. What are your thoughts on cardstock? Well, here's the first thing. The size of the cards is probably one of the most important things to me because I have small hands. And so big decks are really difficult for me to shuffle. And so that's probably the most important thing. I like thinner cardstock. I really like the linen, but I'm not really a cardstock snob. Bags or boxes? Well, I splurged recently on some Peggy bags. So these ones, if you don't have any of these style, I ordered like some of these and then some of the normal bags. And I mean, all of her bags are beautiful, but I love these. So I have splurged on a few of those recently. I love having bags. If they were in big boxes or tough boxes, then I do not want them to be in their box. However, if they are in this style of a box, then I prefer for them to be in the box because first of all, you can find this. You don't have to guess what's in your bag. But also I think they're really well protected. So for me, if they're in a big box, they need to come out. If they're in a tuck box, they need to come out. And I love to invest in a beautiful bag. How'd you learn tarot or get into it? So I was introduced to tarot by my daughter. And because of my upbringing, I used to be terrified of tarot. And so I definitely proceeded with caution. But the more I learned about the tarot, the more I loved it. And it's really just been, I mean, I'm a student of life. I love to learn. I love to watch videos. I have taken some courses, but a lot of it has been self-study, reading books and reading guidebooks, and also trying to lean into my intuitive side of reading. So that's how I learned the tarot. Question 13, the best news in the tarot world you heard lately. That's the best news that I heard recently is that collecting decks is no longer something that can be shamed, that we are embracing the collection of decks. And I'll link the video because I cannot remember, I think it was Krista, and she talks about how collecting decks has been something that's been really helpful for her. And I'll say for me, I'm trying not to go crazy with collecting decks, but I find collecting decks to be as valuable as collecting books or anything else. And so I completely agree with the whole idea of not shaming people for collecting decks. And that is the best news that I've heard in the tarot world for a long time. 14, how many decks are on your to get list? I just recently started making a list because I'm trying to avoid, just clicking and buying absolutely everything that I want because I am very easy to be influenced. This was one of the recent decks that I bought that I really love. And with Amazon and also with the cost of the mass market decks, it can be very easy to click and collect decks way more often than I can afford. So I just started making a list. I don't have a lot on that list, maybe 6 or 7. I just started making a list. So my plan is I really want to work with the decks I have right now and calm down with buying. So my goal is not to buy any decks for the next 3 months, but just to make a list and then just decide the decks that I really want. And that will add something different to my collection than what I have right now. Actually, I heard someone in one of these videos talk about the tarot family. So I'm starting to try to remember to use that phrase because I really like it. If you could only keep 3 decks, which ones would you choose and why? I'm also going to copy what someone else said, and I think it was the same person because they said tarot family. No one else is being asked to choose between people in their family, and so I choose not to either. How does knowing tarot influence your everyday? I think knowing tarot influences my everyday in so many ways. It influences how I understand myself, how intentionally I approach my life, my days, but also my seasons. And I use tarot spreads for the lunar cycles. I also use it for my dailies. So I just feel like I'm more intentional. I feel like I'm more reflective. And I've also started to see the tarot in every day. And it was kind of interesting. Recently, I was talking with a friend, and I said, that's a three of swords moment if I ever saw one. And so I really do start to see tarot in my day-to-day, and I find it to be a really valuable tool to support my mental health, And I'm really happy. I'm really happy that tarot has become part of my life. If you could turn back time, would you have learned tarot any other way? I really wish that I had learned tarot earlier in my life than I did, but I also believe that it happened in divine timing when I was ready for it. So I would say no. What are your thoughts of the Three of Swords? I was just talking about the Three of Swords. My thought of the Three of Swords, I do not enjoy how it is illustrated. And I think it does a disservice to the message. This one is great. Of the Three of Swords, because, swords are about thoughts. And so the way I interpret I love this image of the Three of Swords. And it really shows how I interpret the Three of Swords, which is, mental anguish. I consider it when you know something, and because you now know this, you can never go back. And so it's a painful truth. It can be betrayal. Hold out some Three of Swords for you. Shiny cards. I should also say with cardstock, I do not enjoy glossy cards. Do not enjoy that image of the Three of Swords. That's the Three of Swords. How many decks do you have right now? I have 33 decks, 33 tarot decks. Question 20, if you could befriend one person on Tarotube, who would it be? This seems like a weird question to answer, but I will say that I love Danny Mystic. She is fun, she is funny, and I would love to meet her in person. Question 21. What is your favorite part of the day to do tarot? Definitely morning. I am a morning lark, and I feel my brightest and most ambitious first thing in the morning. So I love doing tarot in the morning. I try to do kind of a reflection near the end of the day, but I almost never do it because my brain doesn't like me in the evening. 22, a confession. Well, one confession is I do not own an indie deck, which I'm very sad about. I would like to own an indie deck. But in my defense, I live in Canada, and our dollar is not doing super well right now, and shipping is really expensive. So that's part of the reason. But I would like to own some indie decks and support Amazon less and support other creators more. Another confession I have is related to my study of tarot, in that, I often am super exuberant in starting a project, but I'm not always great at finishing it. So I kind of stray away from challenges and things like that, thinking that I'll lose steam. But I'm trying to get better at it. So that is the last question. And so I thank you for being here. And if you stay to the end, I really appreciate it. And I hope that you'll put an emoji of some sort in the chat for me. Thanks for being here. I hope we can be tarot friends. And until I see you in the next one, I'm Patty Elaine with 78 Reflections.